There. How's that? That probably fixed it. Man, I did all my opening without audio on the program. How horribly embarrassing. Anyway, my friends, I've got it fixed, and as you can see, we even I have problems in the morning. Well, it's been off work for so long that it just makes sense that I would have some issues. All right, so let's start with Governor Gordon and the budget. I can't believe I did that. Anyway, an article entitled Lawmakers Question Gordon on Data Centers and Gray on Clash with Gordon. Now, it is absolutely in the media's best interest, or what they think are their best interest, to continue fueling the fire between Chuck Gray and Mark Gordon. It creates something for them to talk about, and it just further, gets them into campaign mode. But let's go to the Cowboy and see what they say. And I quote, Governor Mark Gordon fielded questions on data centers Monday when pitching his $11.3 billion budget to lawmakers. Secretary of State Chuck Gray weathered questions over a clash with the governor. One lawmaker called it playing political football. Some of the questions Governor Mark Gordon took from lawmakers Monday while presenting his $11.13 billion proposed budget for the state involved data centers eyeing Wyoming for business locations. Some of the questions Secretary of Chuck Gray took during his agency's budget pitch were about a dispute with Gordon that the Secretary of State said could land in court. One lawmaker, Senator Ogden Driscoll, said Gray's budget would be more palatable if its tenets didn't take the form of a political football. Now, nobody really wants to listen to Ogden Driscoll. He's not in power, but he is on the Appropriations Committee, and so I suppose we need to talk to him a little bit. But, the bigger points of this is that the governor's budget began as roughly 40 pages. That's the one that he released to the public. And it was all the big ticket items. He called it the essentials. Well, the truth is that the actual budget that Governor Gordon is presenting to lawmakers is 4,800 pages long. And like I said, I didn't know that there were that many things to spend money on in Wyoming, but apparently there are. Let's see here. Oh, as it relates to the data centers, this is something that I've been meaning to talk about, but I just continue to put off. I have real questions about any sort of ramp up in technology when there isn't the infrastructure to support it. This is the same problem that Elon Musk highlighted when he was asked about the power grid, and he noted that even the cars that are on order. And this was like a year ago when I read this article, but the cars that were on order with Tesla at that given time, the power grid could not support all of them. And that's the case with all of these data centers, that we do not have the capacity right now to support all of them. And yet there are data centers going in everywhere. Now, is it a boon to Wyoming's economy? Absolutely. Absolutely it is. But I question whether or not it's even feasible. Now, I mean, I don't know. I really haven't looked into it enough. I promise that I will look into this, and we'll have a further discussion on it a little bit later. But on with the governor's budget. The two officials on Monday presented different budget requests to the Joint Legislative Appropriations Committee, which is set to meet half of December and half of January to craft a budget bill for the lawmaking session that opens February 9th. Speaking of his office's 10.45, and that's not even correct. Oh, excuse me, they're talking about the Secretary of State. The $10.45 million budget proposal, Gray said his top priority among the exceptions, and anytime you hear the word exception, that's the gravy that they want to put on top of whatever it is that they spent last year. Because the way that you craft a budget, and if you go to cowboystatepolitics.com and go to the show content page, I think the link is called Budget Book, but there is one form that you fill out. The first column is what'd you spend last year. The next column is what would it cost to do the same thing this year? And then the next column is all of the exceptions. So in other words, what would it cost to do the exact same thing you did the year before? Now, what didn't you buy that you want to buy this time around? And so when you look at the governor's budget, it's fascinating because it would cost roughly $1.9 billion less to do the same thing that we did last year, which is amazing because we built two high schools, or we're building two high schools out of it. And so then he added roughly another $2 billion on top of it. So let's see here. Gordon did not include Gray's $125,000 exception request in his proposed budget. Within a day of Gordon releasing his budget vision, Gray said that he was alarmed and deeply troubled, and claimed Gordon was blocking the budget request for the legally required publication effort of the initiative that has to be on the 2026 ballot. Now, this has been the back and forth between Chuck Gray for the last week or a couple of weeks, whenever the governor released his budget, that we have an initiative on the ballot, and that the Secretary of State is legally obligated to advertise for that budget. I mean, it's not advertising; it's education rather. What is the ballot measure? What would it do? What would it not do? Those sorts of things. Well, the governor vetoed. Or veto's the wrong. I just can't. After I take a long break with the program, it is so hard to get back in the saddle and get going again. But anyway, so the governor did not approve that budget request, and instead said Gray needed to take that out of his portion of the budget, which apparently is something that doesn't happen. On Monday, Gray told the committee this may require, quote, possible litigation against the governor's office. That's when Ogden Driscoll said Gray's request might be more palatable, quote, if it wasn't turned into a political football. And again, this is just Ogden Driscoll. Gray responded, we didn't make it political. And see, this is the problem with Cowboy articles. I mean, essentially, this whole thing goes back and forth, and it's, let's see here, 1, 2, let's see here, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages long, and I took out all the advertisements out of this dumb thing. But anyway, what I've heard from the Agent 29 and other members of the Appropriations Committee is that, this is a typical thing that happens. The governor presents his view of what we ought to spend money on, and then the Appropriations Committee narrows that down. Here's the part about the data centers. Gordon said on Monday, during his budget proposal, he reiterated the budget narrative for his office released November 17th, emphasizing economic diversification, the pursuit of state fire suppression and prevention efforts, the fortification of its water litigation powers, healthcare access, which again is not the role of government, nor is any of this other so-called business development, and attracting businesses while maintaining core industries. Quote, we have an unprecedented opportunity not only to participate, but to lead in making America the energy technology superpower. If we have the courage and vision to seize this moment, said Gordon. Agent 29 asked Gordon about his headline-grabbing statement of the past that Wyoming would, quote, pursue an all-of-the-above energy strategy. Gordon said he's, quote, kind of amended that talk to now pursue the best of all of the above. What do you suppose he means by that? The best of all of the above. That means the governor gets to choose what his energy priorities are and what they aren't. Agent 29's point in talking to the governor was, now, wait a minute. Before you told us that it's an all of the above. It's like everything we're going to pursue that's available to us, we're going to pursue. But the reason why the governor has, said the best of all of that, of the above, is he's realizing that wind and solar and all of his renewable boondoggles aren't really the best option to creating energy in the state. Let's see here. What else? What other we got in here? You know what? I'm so sick of talking about the budget. When I get an update from Agent 29, we'll go back to it. But I can't stand to read through the Cowboy in their long. And do you know why their articles are so long? I learned this the other day, not from the Cowboy, but it all boils down to search engine optimization. That there's a certain number of words that you have to hit in order to make the article appear on Google searches. That's why you're seeing all of these articles that are ridiculously long and that never end. That's what they're doing. It's not because there's more information there. It's so that their articles appear higher in search rankings, which I guess I would do also. Kind of makes sense to do that. And let's see here. Moving on. Trump stands by calling Tim Walz retarded. There's something wrong with him. Now, this one, I don't know if you saw this or not, but let me give you, do I have no, I don't have the original one. So let's go to the article and then I'll play you his response. Quote, President Donald Trump on Sunday stood by his comments Thursday in which he called Governor Tim Walz, the 2024 Democratic vice presidential nominee, retarded. Aboard Air Force One en route to West Palm Beach, Washington, D.C., a reporter asked Trump if he stood by slamming Walz as retarded in the Thanksgiving Truth Social post. Quote, yeah, I think there's something wrong with him here. I've got a video of that part. I mean, and it's the media is incredible. They seize on anything that could possibly make Donald Trump look bad. But here's what he said aboard Air Force One. Now, the audio, they're on a plane and you can hear it. So check this out for a minute.
In that post, you mentioned Tim Walz, and you called him what many Americans do find an offensive word, retarded. Do you stand by that claim of calling Tim Walz retarded?
Yeah, I think there's something wrong with him. Absolutely. Sure.
You don't think
You have a problem with him? You know what? I think there's something wrong with him. Anybody that would do what he did, anybody that would allow those people into his state and pay billions of dollars out to Somalia. We give billions of dollars to Somalia. It's not even a country because it doesn't function like a country. It's got a name, but it doesn't function like a country. Yeah, there's something wrong with Walz.
There's something wrong with that guy. Of course there is. And we all knew that there was. Now, Trump said in his post on Thanksgiving that the country's refugee burden is the leading cause of social dysfunction in America, something that did not exist after World War II. Quote, as an example, hundreds of thousands of refugees from Somalia are completely taking over the once great state of Minnesota. Somalian gangs are roving the streets looking for prey as our wonderful people stay locked in their apartments and houses, hoping against hope that they'll be left alone. That's when Trump called him retarded. The seriously retarded Governor Tim Walz does nothing, either through fear, incompetence, or both, while the worst congressmen and women in our country, Ilhan Omar, always wrapped in her swaddling hijab, and who probably came into the U.S. illegally, in that you're not allowed to marry your brother, does nothing but hatefully complain about our country, its constitution, and how badly she is treated. When her place of origin is a decadent, backward, crime-ridden nation, which is essentially not even a country for the lack of the government. Trump went on to announce that he will permanently pause migration from all third world countries to allow the U.S. system to fully recover. Walz said Sunday that it is a badge of honor to be insulted by Walz. Then he went on to blame Trump for his for everything that's happening in his state. And actually, I've got a video of that one too. Let me pull that up. Let's see here. Here you go. It's all Trump's fault.
I do want to start with the tragic shooting of the two National Guard service members. In the aftermath of the shooting, as you know, President Trump has responded by vowing to crack down on refugees, including from countries beyond Afghanistan, specifically targeting the Somali community in your home state. He also described you using a slur widely regarded as derogatory toward people with intellectual disabilities. I want to read for you what he said, Governor, and get your reaction on the other side. He said, hundreds of thousands of refugees from Somalia are completely taking over the once great state of Minnesota. Somalian gangs are roving the streets looking for prey as our wonderful people stay locked in their apartments and houses, hoping against hope they'll be left alone. The seriously blank governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, does nothing either through fear, incompetence, or both. What is your response to President Trump, Governor?
Yes. What is your response, Governor? Now, before we continue this, just a couple of comments on that one. The media is still obsessed with language. Now, you notice that whatever her name is, Catherine Welker or whatever, she said, oh, blank. She wouldn't even repeat the word that Trump used. It's because the Democrats are obsessed with language. But all right, let's continue.
Yeah, well, first of all, let me express my condolences to the families of the National Guardsmen. They're out there doing their duty. They serve us. As a commander-in-chief of the National Guard and someone who served, we have a responsibility to put them in a position where they're protected and they have a clear mission. And so I would express my condolences there. Look, Donald Trump insulting me is a badge of honor for me, but I think we all know, both as an educator for a couple decades and as a parent, using that term is just so damaging. It's hurtful. We have fought 3 decades to get this out of our schools. Kids know better than to use it. But look, this is what Donald Trump has done. He's normalized this type of hateful behavior and this type of language. And mainly, look, at first, I think it's just because he's a...
Okay, all right. I can't take it anymore. But you get the point that it's not his fault that all this is happening. The very first thing he does is pivot to, hey, it's all Trump's fault. And, that's... And there's no better argument that they have, that he can't accept blame for what he's done to Minnesota. Rather, it has to be everything, everything has to be, Trump's fault. And I mean, it's absolutely incredible, my friends, that none of these people can accept responsibility for the things that they've done. Rather, it has to be somebody else's fault. It has to be, it can't be associated with them. And the reason for it is with Democrats, everything is politics. That it doesn't really matter, who got hurt, which group of people a policy is hurting. With them, it's all about politics. And the name of the game right now is just to hurt Donald Trump in any way, shape, or form. So if that means apologizing is the wrong word, ignoring what's happening in your community, ignoring the fact that you blew over $1 billion on people who are not even U.S. citizens, well, then that's obviously Trump's fault too. Continuing with the piece here, that Wall said Sunday that it was the badge of honor to be insulted by the president. Then he went on to blame Trump for all of the fraud in the state, as if it's Trump's fault that the state of Minnesota doesn't have anything to do. Doesn't have any controls on any of your taxpayer dollars that go out. And, it's, again, with the Democrats, it's all politics. And, there's really no more to say about that. So let's go ahead and take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about all the auto pen signatures. Trumpy has decided that they're all null and void. I was waiting for this, man. If the president doesn't sign it, it means it's not legal. Back in a minute. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Tuesday, back from the Thanksgiving holiday. Welcome back to the program. I'm your host, David Iverson, documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. A couple of quick show notes before we get going. If you haven't signed up for the Cowboy State Politics newsletter, it's called The Outrider. You really need to. I have really enjoyed putting it together, but it's a recap of everything that's happening on Cowboy State Politics. And I have to tell you, my friends, there is a ton. So far, I've had nothing but fabulous responses to the newsletter. Now, the way that you sign up is to go to cowboystatepolitics.com, and the very first thing you'll see is a pop-up that says, join the newsletter. Put your email address in there and hit submit, and I will add you to the list. It's a fantastic resource, and it's, like I say, it's already received some great responses. Also, I'm getting very, very close to having the open range record ready to go. Been working on the website, and I expect within the next couple of, the next week or so, that thing will be ready to rock. So anyway, there's a lot happening on Cowboy State Politics. You can listen to the podcast every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday morning. I usually get it posted by 10 or 11 o'clock. Also, the Cowboy State Politics live show, this one, the one you're watching right now, is every Tuesday through Friday from 8 a.m. until 10. And next time, I promise to get the audio turned on when we start the program. Man, live radio, live TV, live podcast. It's a creature all on its own. And so anyway, my friends, thank you for watching today. Have you had the thought that I wondered what happened with all of those auto pen signatures? That what exactly happened? Did we just forget about them? Are we not going to do anything about it? Is it just too big of a problem? Well, no, as it turns out. Our pal Donald Trump has declared all of them null and void from the Daily Wire. Trump nukes Biden's legacy, declares all auto pen signed orders null and void from the Daily Wire, and I quote, on Friday, President Trump detonated a political thunderclap, declaring that any document former President Joe Biden signed with the auto pen is null and void, a sweeping reversal that, by Trump's count, would wipe out roughly 92% of Biden's executive actions. Trump framed the auto pen saga as a usurpation of presidential authority by radical left lunatics who circled Biden around the big, beautiful, resolute desk, insisting that Biden himself was not involved in the auto pen process. And Trump said, quote, and if Biden now claims otherwise, Trump warned that he'd be charged with perjury because he wasn't involved in all of those. There are so many emails that have come out that, it's pretty clear that Biden wasn't even consulted on a whole bunch of them. The announcement didn't emerge in a vacuum for more than a year. Reports, and this is what I was saying, is that, I kind of got the feeling that maybe we weren't going to do anything about it, that there was too much other stuff going on, and we'll just let this one go by as well. Apparently, I was wrong. My prediction was wrong, not that I was wrong. For more than a year, reports from watchdogs to congressional investigators have painted a picture of a presidency increasingly outsourced to staff as Biden's cognitive decline accelerated. In March of 2025, the Daily Wire detailed findings, this is what I was referring to, from the Heritage Foundation's Oversight Project, showing that Biden's December 30th, 2022 pardons had been signed with the exact same auto pen signature while Biden vacationed in the Virgin Islands. Although some high-profile documents, such as Hunter Biden's pardon and Biden's withdrawal from the 2024 race, appear hand-signed, numerous explosive pardons, including those of Anthony Fauci, Mark Milley, the January 6th committee, the members of Biden's family, bore the same auto pen imprint. Kyle Brosnan, the Oversight Project's chief counsel, has called the situation troubling, noting that the power to issue pardons belongs solely to the president as a constitutional principle. Coupled with the special counsel Robert Hur's description of Biden as, quote, an elderly man with a poor memory, Brosnan argued the evidence suggests Biden wasn't really running the White House. It was the staff. Now, get in the Wayback Machine and go back to when Barack Obama reauthorized the Patriot Act. I can't remember what he was doing overseas, but he wasn't in the White House. And it was a big deal in the media that Obama used the auto pen to reauthorize the Patriot Act. That's entirely different because, it was uncharacteristically transparent. The Obama administration said, hey, we're using the auto pen to sign it, but it is the president authorizing it. And there may have even been a message from Barack Obama at the time. But these things are not the same. So in the first case, it was Obama being, like I said, uncharacteristically transparent. And then in the other case, it was all of the staff in the White House running the auto pen, doing pretty much whatever they wanted. And the emails that are back and forth, and I'll dig those up for tomorrow's program so I can show you some of them to make so that it's very clear in your mind that really it wasn't Joe Biden that was running the White House. It was absolutely his staff. And I don't really think that there's any question about that. Let's see here. The piece goes on. And let's see here. The Trump White House, the DOJ, and the House Oversight Committees have been conducting parallel investigations reviewing what may exceed 1 million documents bearing Biden's auto pen signature. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt summarized the administration's view bluntly. Quote, Biden, quote, handed the power of the presidency to an auto pen. And Trump, with characteristic finality, says those documents are done. And rightfully so, I might add. Now, other stuff. Now, if you remember, and maybe you didn't even pay any attention to this, but when J.D. Vance was first in the Senate, he had a pretty serious back and forth with that worthless Senator Ben Sasse from Fox News. Vance's past warnings reignite after the Afghan national named as a suspect in the D.C. Guard shooting. The vice president called the shooting a somber reminder of the daily risks faced by service members while visiting troops at Fort Campbell on Wednesday. Vice President J.D. Vance has long cautioned that the U.S. refugee vetting process dating back to the U.S. withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan in 2021 and the refugees who came afterward. Vance's previous remarks on the matter are resurfacing after National Guard troops were shot in Washington on Wednesday. Law enforcement officials identified the shooting suspect as, I'm not even going to try, Ramanullah Lakhanwal, who entered the U.S., who entered the U.S. legally in 2021 under the Biden administration's Operation Allies Welcome program, which sought to resettle Afghan refugees in the United States. In 2021, Vance posted a video to social media in response to the ridiculous Senator Ben Sasse. Here is what he said about it. Here we go.
That Senator Ben Sasse went on national TV yesterday and attacked me for suggesting we should focus on getting our own citizens out of Afghanistan rather than the Afghan refugees. And he said great countries honor their word. Of course, nobody disagrees with that. It's a ridiculous platitude. The question is not whether we honor our word. The question is who have we made promises to? Who do we owe an obligation toward? And to any leader of this country, the obvious answer should be American citizens. So let's focus first on getting them out of Afghanistan before we say another word about the Afghan refugees. Now, Senator Sasse also said that he would welcome the Afghan refugees to his neighborhood with open arms. That's very sweet of him. I'm sure a lot of liberals will say very nice things about him because he said that. But the question is not whether we help the Afghan refugees. The question is, first, how do we do it? And second, how do we do it in a way that doesn't destroy our own sovereignty? So let's have an honest question about what exists in Afghanistan. According to Pew,
okay, all right. That is an excellent point. How do we let people into the country? How do we support immigration without risking destroying our own sovereignty? And this is the problem that I led the program with that you didn't get to hear. But it is no different. And I'll just go through it one more time, just in case this was in the beginning. I think it was before I turned the audio on. So the immigration problem is no more complicated than your own home. That you wouldn't let somebody that you didn't know, that you had no idea who they were, come into your house and sit on your couch and watch TV with you. You wouldn't do that because you wouldn't have any idea if they were going to steal your stuff or hold you hostage. I mean, none of that makes any sense. But essentially, that's what we're doing with our country. We're just opening up the front door and we're letting whomever in that wants to come in. And we're not vetting them. We have no idea who these people are, what their alliances are. I mean, how many times have we seen reports of, well, this guy from Afghanistan worked with us during when the U.S. was there, and now he's a member of the terrorist cell. I mean, there have been so many reports of that, but it's no more complicated than just locking your front door, that you find out who it is that you're inviting for dinner before you invite them in. But that's not what Biden's administration was doing. Let's go ahead and finish up what J.D. Vance was saying.
40% of the people there believe that blowing yourself up, committing a suicide bombing, is an acceptable way to solve a problem. So yes, let's help the Afghans who helped us, but let's ensure that we're properly vetting them so that we don't get a bunch of people who believe they should blow themselves up at a mall because somebody looked at their wife the wrong way. That is not real leadership. Real leadership is accepting the trade-offs of the situation, putting our own citizens first, and not dealing with fake platitudes because it gets people in the media to say nice things about you.
I absolutely love J.D. Vance, man. He is such a good debater. I need to do some research to see if I am, if I didn't know it, I would say he was absolutely on the debate team when he was in college. But anyway, Vance claimed that the Pew Research Center found that 4 in 10 Afghanis believe that suicide bombing is justified to protect Islam. Fox News, let's see here. Fox News Digital could not independently confirm the existence of the poll. However, Radio Free Europe, an American state-funded media organization, reported on the poll in 2013 with the same statistics. Afghanistan's top religious leaders, who make up the Afghan Ulema Council, have previously issued Islamic rulings to ban suicide attacks and have claimed that such attacks aren't in alignment with Islamic teachings. Now, there is a big difference between being a Muslim and being an Islamist. Now, being a Muslim, and there's a mosque over in Gillette. I mean, there's mosques everywhere. And the vast majority of them are, they're just practicing their own religion. That is different. Now, it's not argue. I mean, it is absolutely a fact that there are passages in the Quran that absolutely refer to killing infidels. Okay, so there's that. We can handle that at a later time. But being a Muslim is different than being an Islamist. Being an Islamist is using a religion to further a political end. It's and just look at what happened after the Shah of Iran fell. Iran in the 1970s was a pretty progressive place. I don't mean progressive in the Democrat sense. I mean in the sense that it wasn't a closed-off, cloistered country. I mean, and I'll dig up the video for you that what Iran looked like in the 1970s. And there was a huge number of women that went to college. Women were working. Women weren't forced to wear a hijab all of the time. It was as far as the Middle East is concerned, a pretty open place. But after the Shah fell, Islamists used the Muslim religion as a cover for their dictatorship. And there's no question right now that it is absolutely a dictatorship. But it's a very different thing. And, if you go back to the poll that J.D. Vance was talking about, that 4 in 10 Afghans believe suicide bombing is justified to protect Islam. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. But there are countless numbers of people that believe that very thing that we've let into our country. Specifically, Vance pointed to an Afghan national, Nazir Ahmed Tawadi, who at the time had been charged for allegedly planning a terrorist attack on or around Election Day in 2024. Now, he pleaded guilty to 2 terrorism charges in June. He and his co-conspirator, Abdullah Haji Zada, also from Afghanistan, were arrested on October 7th, 2024, after they purchased guns and ammunition from undercover FBI agents. If you're not a U.S. citizen, you can't legally purchase a gun in America. They purchased AK-47 rifles, 500 rounds of ammunition, and 10 magazines with the intent to conduct mass casualty attacks in the U.S. Vance referenced his remarks from 2021 Wednesday after the shooting in Washington. He said, quote, "I remember back in 2021 criticizing the Biden policy of opening the floodgate to unvetted Afghan refugees," Vance said Wednesday. "Friends sent me messages calling me a racist. It was a clarifying moment. Many of our voters will demand not just words, but actions, and this is entirely an appropriate response," he said Wednesday. We'll first bring the shooter to justice, and then we must redouble our efforts to deport people with no right to be in our country. And people that we have no idea who they are. And it was really, during the Afghan withdrawal, the U.S. State Department, I mean, they pretty much just said, well, these people helped us, you're going to bring them in. And there were a lot. And I don't want to underemphasize this point, that a lot of the people that were evacuated out of Afghanistan were not brought out by the U.S. government. It was private entities, most of which was funded by Glenn Beck, that brought them out of Afghanistan. So anyway, I mean, J.D. Vance, he's right on the money, that, we do have an immigration problem in Wyoming. And the truth is, we've opened the front door at dinner time and invited everybody in town to dinner, and we have no idea who they are. Let's see here. So this is a shocking poll, and it's and this tells you, I think, what some of the bigger problems with our education system is. And I've got here in just a second, I'm going to show you that actually the problem the problem is much bigger than we think. A poll finds 51% of voters prefer democratic socialism in 2028. Quote, a new poll by Rasmussen and the Heartland Institute found that a slim majority of young voters prefer a democratic socialist to win the 2028 presidential election. The survey of 1,496 likely voters aged 18 to 39 showed 51% favored a democratic socialist. Again, there's no such thing as democratic socialism. It is socialism. By definition, it can't be democratic. And even if democracy meant what you think it means, it still wouldn't be democratic. Our founders knew that democracy was nothing better than mob rule. That's why we have a republic and not a democracy. It was Thomas Jefferson who said that history teaches us mainly what is bad government, and I've butchered the quotation, but that's essentially what he said. Quote, it is hard to believe that a solid majority of young Americans think democratic socialism is the answer to the deep-rooted economic problems they face, given that socialism has utterly failed to uplift the downtrodden every time and in every place it is implemented, said the Heartland Institute research fellow Chris Talgo of the poll. However, when they grow up in an environment surrounded by adults who champion democratic socialism, it starts to make sense. The respondents cited, and listen to this big number, 27% that their parents were at least amenable to socialism. Online videos and podcasts, 17%, books, 10%, and as the most influential sources of their support in their ideology. A majority, 54%, also said their parents or guardians were favorable toward democratic socialism when they were growing up. Now, this might be one of those things where you say, well, that's not happening in Wyoming. That would never be a problem here. Really? Listen to this. Now, this is, before I play this soundbite for you, this is Josh Durrell, the guy that is the head of the Wyoming Business Council. Now, their whole job is to increase business in Wyoming. I did an interview with him, and I think I played it last week. But during the course of the interview, we got into a pretty heated debate about the role of government. And this, my friends, is what he said. Now, this is the guy that is the head of the Wyoming Business Council. That is the capital, what is supposed to be the Capitalism Council. Listen to this.
The free market is actually not free, but you have to remember, those markets are working.
Okay.
The market is working against us. So we have to use government intervention to actually reverse that. I know all of you are probably going to have to take some Benadryl because that sounds like an allergic reaction waiting to happen.
The free market is working against us. Holy crap, my friends. And that guy, he is one of the highest paid state employees in all of Wyoming. And he's the guy that's saying the free market is working against us. You think that this isn't happening in Wyoming? My friends, you are sadly mistaken if you believe that is the case. Let me just play that for you one more time. Again, Josh Durrell, with the Wyoming Business Council. And in just a second, I'm going to show you what he's up to today, right now. But listen to that one more time.
The free market is actually not free, but you have to remember those markets are working.
Okay,
the market is working against us. So we have to use government intervention to actually reverse that. I know all of you are probably going to have to take some Benadryl because that sounds like an allergic reaction waiting to happen.
You're darn straight. It's an allergic reaction waiting to happen. I mean, absolutely incredible. I can't even believe that he said that. And it's again, it's absolutely amazing. And you know, okay, so let's just do this right now. Let me find it. Here it is. And let's go back and share. Man, this is where I need Agent 29. Holy cow. Here we go. Okay. So it's going to look a little weird. Maybe entire screen. Allow. Okay. Woo! There. That's what I wanted to show you. So Wyoming Business Council hosts statewide watch parties to mobilize a team of thousands around their economic vision. The public is invited to observe the legislative budget process and discuss Wyoming's future. The Wyoming Business Council is hosting a series of statewide watch parties designed to increase public engagement and awareness of the budget process. The event is framed around the core message that change is a team sport. Join a JAC watch party and be part of shaping Wyoming's future. It's the presentation will outline, quote, its vision for a more resilient Wyoming future and detail the necessary strategic investments and big bets required to reverse negative economic trends. Well, the negative economic trend, my friends, is the Wyoming Business Council. We have dumped hundreds of millions of dollars into that outfit, of which Josh Durrell makes a tremendous amount of money, by the way. And in the entire 27 years that outfit has been in existence, the GDP of Wyoming has gone down. And so not only are they not accomplishing their mission, now the Wyoming Business Council, and I can't even believe that I'm saying this, the Wyoming Business Council is reverting to activism to try to push their what they want to do. And that is picking winners and losers, handing out taxpayer dollars to organizations that otherwise don't deserve them. I mean, it is absolutely shocking that that's what Josh Durrell is doing now. He's organizing watch parties. Now, it's under the guise of, hey, just come and see what's happening at the Joint Appropriations Committee. But you'll notice what he said, and let me just read it. Let me pull it up again and read you what he said. Let's see here. The presentation will outline, quote, its vision for a more resilient Wyoming future and detail the necessary strategic investments and big bets required to reverse negative economic trends, such as youth outmigration, and ensure long-term prosperity. And of course, that's just their vision. That's just what the Wyoming Business Council says. But it is absolutely shocking that they're using your taxpayer dollars to push this sort of thing. I mean, it is just absolutely incredible, my friends. We're a little bit early, but let's go ahead and take our second break. And when we come back, I'll open up the phone lines. We can see what's on your mind. And we're going to talk about the 2026 midterms. Back in a minute. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Hunting season. Right about now, you're off with all of your pals, stalking the big gigantic elk or buck mule deer that you've been thinking about all summer long. And your lovely wife is at home, probably enjoying her time without you. But soon, my friend, all of that is going to come to a screeching halt. And I want you to think about just one little thing. She's able to park her car inside the garage because all of your hunting crap is with you right now. Now, if you'd like the marital bliss to continue, I suggest you make a call to Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They can build you a garage or a barn or any other type of metal structure for you to store all of your toys in so that your wife can continue parking inside the garage. And you can avoid sleeping on the couch for the next month or two. Call Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Get them to build you a metal building before it's too late. Welcome back to the program. Cowboy State Politics live on a Tuesday. Finding my way helping you find your way through the fog of Wyoming politics. Welcome back to the program, my friends. I'm David Iverson, doing what I was born to do with talent given to me by God himself. Welcome back to the show, my friends. I went ahead and opened up the phone lines. If there's something on your mind that you want to talk about, go ahead and give me a call. The phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989. If there's something you want to talk about, go ahead and give me a call, and I'll go ahead and leave the phone lines open for the last hour of the show. And, there's plenty of stuff going on. If only what's happening in your, in your refrigerator post-Thanksgiving. I got to tell you a funny story. So, of course, we had Thanksgiving dinner over at the in-laws' house. And, we had a ton of food. And, we're packing up to leave and got all the leftovers put together. And, we had enough food to send a couple of big pans over to one of the neighbors. And Christine and I get home and we're kind of languishing on the couch. And one of us looked at the other and said, I could really go for some turkey right now. And Christine likes stuffing. Well, I really want some stuffing. And we go to the fridge and Christine says, there's no stuffing. And I said, what about the turkey? And she goes, there's no turkey. And so we had to circle back with the in-laws and actually I didn't even get a turkey sandwich after Thanksgiving. Not that I couldn't make one the next day, but it's kind of a tradition in my world that after Thanksgiving dinner, I have a big turkey sandwich, so I didn't even get that. But we got it all figured out. Now, we're not exactly in election season yet, but anymore, it kind of seems like election season never stops. But there are a couple of big things that are shaping up nationally. And there's a piece in the Daily Wire entitled, "These are the most important races to watch in 2026. And I would say, let me just start with Wyoming. I'm fairly confident that conservatives will retain control of the House of Representatives. The big question is in the Senate. There are a couple of people that are retiring, and so those are open seats. And there's a couple of really radical redcoats who are absolutely vulnerable in 2026. Nancy Case being one of them. Considering what I've got on the guy, you would think that nobody would ever vote for that guy ever again. But there's more than a couple to watch. So in my opinion, while the House is certainly important, I really don't see that one as in too much danger. But you never know. I mean, we're not at the filing period yet. And in Wyoming, you never know who's going to run for office until the filing period is over. But nationally, here's some of the races to watch in 2026. The first one, according to the Daily Wire anyway, is in Texas. Quote, "The cycle's most heated election began months ago when Trump ally Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton announced a challenge to longtime Senator John Cornyn." John Cornyn is pretty much a redcoat. He's kind of like Mitch McConnell, that depending on who's in office, that's generally how he's going to vote. Paxton has argued that Cornyn is too establishment to continue representing the state, saying that Cornyn's swamp friends are spending tens of millions of dollars to attack me. That's a direct quote from him. Cornyn, in turn, has called Paxton a con man and a fraud, according to the Associated Press. The winner of that primary will face off against either Colin Allred, a former congressman and state representative James Tallarico, who made national headlines in 2021 when he and a group of Democratic colleagues fled Texas to prevent the state legislature from voting on bills that they opposed. More recently, Tallarico, who has pitched himself as a Christian Democrat, came under fire after it was revealed that he followed a number of OnlyFans models on Instagram. All right. And then we have Representative Yasmin Crockett, whose radical outbursts are almost too numerous to mention, is also entering the race, which has Republicans thrilled. I would love to run a race against Yasmin Crockett. Anyway, and then the next one is in Maine. Like John Cornyn, Susan Collins has caught plenty of flack from her fellow Republicans in recent years. It's because she's not really a Republican. Most of the time, she votes with Lisa Murkowski. And it's almost always on big ticket items where she tends to go with the other side. But the moderate senator's main concern as she runs for a fifth term comes from Democrats, not a primary challenger. Maine Governor Janet Mills lost an early lead to populist upstart Graham Plattner. Now, Plattner is the guy, I told you about him on the show. He's the guy that had the Nazi tattoo on his chest and claimed that, I had no idea what it was, even though he told his staff exactly what it was. He's an oyster farmer who blew an early lead with a series of scandals, including resurfaced Reddit posts in which he slammed cops and called himself a communist, and the revelation that he had a Nazi symbol on his chest. Plattner has been bleeding staff in the wake of these revelations, including his campaign manager, political director, and national finance manager. Despite all this, he seems to be the Democrat to beat, though recent polls found that voters favor Collins the more they learn about Plattner. Let's hear Michigan. Haley Stevens, State Senator Mallory McCarrow, and Abdul El Sayed are seeing who can run furthest to the left. McMorrow recently held a fundraiser with a leftist blogger who mocked Charlie Kirk's assassination. Stevens, who was endorsed by former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, once screamed at her constituents for supporting the Second Amendment. Take a look at this one. Let's see if I can find it here. Here we go. Let's see here. This one's crazy, man. She's just screaming about the NRA to her constituents. Check it out.
And this is why the NRA has got to go! The NRA has got to go!
Incredible. But yeah, so that's, when you're talking about people that, are absolutely crazy, and then different videos of them surface, like Graham Plattner, like this lady screaming at her. Excuse me, I probably shouldn't use the word lady. But whichever Democrat emerges victorious from the fray will face off against Mike Rogers, a Trump-endorsed former congressman who lost his 2024 Senate race by a tiny majority. I actually kind of like Mike Rogers. He's not as conservative as I would prefer, but certainly he's preferable to the anti-NRA folks. In Ohio, quote, Rogers isn't the only lawmaker staging a political comeback. Oh, God. Do you remember Sherrod Brown, a longtime leftist figure in the upper chamber who lost his seat to Republican Bernie Moreno, is running against Senator John Husted, who was tapped to fill Vice President J.D. Vance's seat. Brown was dogged with allegations of hypocrisy throughout his time in the Senate, something the Daily Wire frequently covered. The leftist was slammed for taking donations from drug companies at the center of the opioid crisis and attending a ritzy Hollywood fundraiser while constituents were worried about water quality after the 2023 train derailment in East Palestine. California. Now, this is where, Republicans could make a lot of headway, but the problem is that it's districts like Nancy Pelosi's. Of all the House seats up for grabs in 2026, and remember, that's almost all of them, the most closely watched is California, where Democrats are fighting to fill former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's soon-to-be-vacated seat. Pelosi reportedly wants Connie Chan to succeed her, but the candidate to beat in California is Senator Scott Wiener, a man so radical that even the New York Times has doubts about him. From radical okay, this is a guy who is probably going to end up being the representative from Pelosi's district. From, quote, from radical trans activism to legalizing prostitution and pedophilia, there's almost nothing that Wiener doesn't want the state to permit, unless, of course, parents don't want their minor children to undergo radical gender procedures, in which case he thinks the state should be able to take custody of those children. Wiener is almost too insane to believe. In Georgia, okay, so Jon Ossoff, maybe you don't remember who he is, but he'll be defending his seat against a Republican challenger yet to be determined. The current front-runners are Representative Mike Collins and Buddy Carter, a former University of Tennessee football coach, Derek Dooley. The race is expected to be extraordinarily expensive, as Ossoff already has $21 million in cash on hand, according to the FEC. And although it's unclear who the nominee on the Republican side will be, millions are already pouring in for the individual candidates at this stage. Ossoff most recently made waves for his vote against reopening the government, a vote that Republicans will likely lord over him in the cycle. Now, Jon Ossoff. So, do you remember during the whole Obamacare fight and Organizing for America, the Obama campaign put out I guess it was a video of, and it had the pajama, what we later called the pajama boy. Let's see here. Do I still have that? Yeah. Okay. So let me just get back to where I can show you this picture. Where is it? Well, I guess I don't have it. Okay. So, all right. Anyway, so Pajama Boy was, it was this entire video, and Jon Ossoff looks almost exactly like him. And so, it's incredible the people that the Democrats find to vote for them. And so anyway, my friends, I wish I could show you that picture because it's absolutely, absolutely incredible. But you remember the video, right? The guy's dressed in plaid and he's holding a little coffee cup, and it looks strikingly like Jon Ossoff. So anyway, there's a whole bunch of races to watch. And again, don't forget that there's races to watch in Wyoming as well. A lot of them, a lot of them are going to happen in the Senate, I think. Oh, here we go. I can do this for you. All right, check this out. So there is the picture that I was looking for. Now, remember him? That's Pajama Boy. And now here he is, right up next to John, the senator. I mean, they look strikingly similar. Look at the smile, the little corners of the mouth. I mean, almost exact. I don't know if it's exactly the one, but it looks pretty close to me. Anyway, my friends, moving on. From justthenews.com, another House Republican announces that he won't run for re-election. Representative Troy Niels is joining a growing number of House Republicans that have resigned or announced that they would not seek re-election. Niels joins a growing number of House Republicans that have resigned or announced that they would not seek re-election. After more than 20 years in law enforcement, serving and protecting my community, and this is quoting now, as a police officer, constable, county sheriff, Army veteran, 6 years representing the district in Congress, I've made the decision after conversations with my beautiful bride and my girls over the Thanksgiving holiday to focus on my family and return home after this Congress. Now, the Texan said that he called President Donald Trump to inform him of his decision to step back before he made this announcement. Quote, President Trump has always been a strong ally. Okay, on and on and on it goes. Neil's decision not to run again follows several resignations and similar announcements from House Republicans as the party enters into the modern election year when the party said also controls the White House is historically vulnerable. Now, historically, the White House or the party in power loses seats during the midterm elections. And that's pretty much how it goes, and it's almost to be expected. I mean, even Barack Obama lost seats during the midterms. Donald Trump, the first time around, lost seats during the midterms. And so it almost always happens. It would almost be historic to see the Republicans gain seats in the midterms. I mean, we all hope that that's what happens, but history tells us that that's probably not going to be the case. Last week, one-time Trump ally turned critic Marjorie Taylor Greene said she would resign from Congress on January 5th, long before her term expires. She joined at least 22 other Republicans who have said that they will not seek re-election, either with plans to retire or to run for high office. I was never really that big of an MTG fan. I mean, I appreciated her votes almost all the time. She voted with the president. And so, for that part, that's a good thing. But I was never really that big of a fan. But what I really have a problem with is when politicians who relied upon the party, relied upon conservative voters, just decide to, give up the ghost halfway through their term. I think it's disrespectful to your constituents. They're the ones that put you in office and you accepted the job. And the job's for 2 years. It's not for 1.5 or whatever the case may be, or just one. It's a 2-year job. And so, if you can't hack it, that's fine. Don't try to blame anybody else. And she got into this big spat with Donald Trump, and I'm not speaking on, which I'm not taking sides in that one. I'm not trying to figure out who I agree with and who I don't. But the truth is she got in a spat with Donald Trump, and that never ends well. But if you're going to do that, at the very least, you should be able to stand up and take whatever heat's coming, because it's going to happen. But it's your constituents that you have to worry about. I mean, you're the one that took the job. You're the one that campaigned for the job, and there's no reason why you shouldn't fill out the job. To just quit in January, and the excuses that she gave is, well, it's going to be a really nasty primary, and I'm just done with all of it. Yeah, well, maybe you should have thought of that before you ran for office. I just don't have any respect. And I don't have respect for politicians on either side who quit midstream. I'm not speaking of those folks who have, family problems or, they have health problems. That's an entirely different story. But to just quit because you don't like what's going on, I think it's extraordinarily disrespectful to your voters. And it pretty much says that you should have never run for office in the first place. Now, compare that to one representative we have in the House, J.R. Riggins. He had a heart attack. I think it was right before the session, or the very first part of the session or right before, and he was out for most of it. And then when he was finally, I'm assuming, released from his doctors, I think he was there for like the last week or the last 2 weeks, but he had a huge medical problem and he still came back. And so we should expect more from our Congress people and senators. You sign up for the job, you should finish the job. You shouldn't quit halfway through. And certainly not because you picked a fight with Donald Trump and you think that you're going to be on the losing side, which, I mean, it is Donald Trump. So if you have picked a fight with him, you're probably going to lose anyway. And let's see here. You know what? I've got something in the stack of stuff here that I want to go to next because I just saw it. Here we go. And we'll go. We'll go to the refugee pause in just a second. But there's a new poll out that more people are waking up to the reality that modern college is an absolute scam. And this is from the New York Post. Americans are rightly waking up. Much of higher education is now a scam. And I think just from before even getting into the article, if you're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for an education, you really got to question whether you're paying for the piece of paper or if you're actually paying for the education, because you can go to a lot of different schools for far less. And, Wyoming's a good example because we have a pretty strong community college network. And, you can get just as fine of education there as you can at just about anywhere. It's more about how much you apply yourself rather than who the instructor is. Now, I guess there's something to be said for the diploma that you receive at the end. I mean, certainly if you have a diploma from Regis University or the university, that's going to, maybe say a little bit more than if you have a 4-year degree from. And you know what? I'm going to back up on that because I don't even think that it does. Really, when you get down to it, employers look for a degree simply because they want to know that you're going to finish something, that you're going to apply yourself to whatever it is that you're doing. and that you're going to complete it. And so there's no reason to spend a tremendous amount of money. But now that even the New York Post is saying that, it's a scam. Let me just read the first couple paragraphs to you. More Americans are wising up to the fact that higher education has become a raw deal for all too many young people. A new NBC News poll found the always broadcasting communism, never-ending broadcast of communism network poll finds that a full 63% of voters believe a 4-year college degree now isn't worth it, since many students graduate with a large amount of debt but no specific job skills. That's up markedly from 2013, when a majority took the opposite view, as 53% called a degree, quote, worth the cost because people have a better chance of to get a good job and earn more money over their lifetime. But that was the case for generations of Americans who saw college as a key step to higher paying jobs and a better life. Being upwardly mobile was almost entirely synonymous with being college educated. But over the last few decades, that dynamic has shifted. Far too many college degrees guarantee nothing except onerous debt. Tuition costs have skyrocketed, doubling over the last 20 years, a redoubling from 2 decades earlier, as universities jacked up prices to match increased help, such as federal aid and even larger government-facilitated student loans. And that's probably the genesis of the whole problem. That if the federal government is going to guarantee student loans, and in order to go to college, people have to get student loans. And so why not jack up the price? Because those student loans will also be guaranteed by the federal government. So there's no reason why you wouldn't make a whole bunch of cash. And so like almost everything the government gets involved in, if you want it screwed up, invite the federal government to be part of it. That's almost always what happened. And I think that you can point the finger directly at federal student loans for the creation of this problem. Secondarily, because of those inflated costs and inflated payments from the federal government, universities have started offering degrees in things that are absolutely worthless. So unless you're going to spend your entire life in academia, a degree in gender studies doesn't do you any good. You're not going to go to, maybe there's a law firm that'll hire you with a degree in gender studies, but you're not going to go get an actual job in doing so. It's absolutely ridiculous to claim that's even the case. But a report last year found that 2/3 of colleges require DEI-related courses to graduate, offering classes like, quote, understanding diversity in a pluralistic society and the abolition of whiteness. Why take on a huge amount of debt to be pummeled nonstop with identity politics? And this is the other part why more people are seeing college as a giant scam, that it is no more than an indoctrination mill to create little liberals. And I've got a friend who is actually a sponsor of the program, and he always says, if you send your kids to Caesar, you shouldn't be surprised when they come out Romans. And that's exactly what's happening. You have, liberal universities training a whole bunch of liberals. Now, Americans have noticed all of this. College enrollment has plummeted these last few years, while numbers of Gen Zers are eyeing high-paying, high-demand careers as welders, plumbers, and electricians. And this is the third part of this entire thing. You don't have to go to college to get a good paying job. There are many, many, many occupations where you can make a decent living without having to go to college at all. Now, a friend of mine is a plumber, and he always says, man, you could be an apprentice with him for 3 years, and at the end of the 3 years, you'll be making just as much as he is. And at the time we were talking about this, he was making like $75,000, $80,000 a year as a plumber. And so, why wouldn't you do that when you could make a whole bunch of money and avoid a giant amount of crushing student loan debt, which is what it is. I mean, if you come out of college with hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt, you're not going to pay that off, until you're 50, probably. And while you're trying to find a job, you're going to be broke because your student loans come due and you have to pay them off. And let's just be perfectly honest about the whole thing. Some people just aren't meant to go to college. Some people are are not suited to go to law school or to become a doctor. They are better suited to work with their hands or maybe be an electrician or be a plumber or be a carpenter. Agent 29. He spent his entire career as a carpenter, and he's one of the best carpenters around. I mean, if you want something really beautiful built, you should have hired him before he went into politics, because he would have had a lot more time to get it done. But the point is that not everybody needs to go to college. So there's three problems here. First of all, it's overpriced. Second, they're delivering a good that nobody wants to buy, no employer wants to buy. And third, that you can go get a job and make a decent living elsewhere. And one of the reasons for this, exodus from higher education is mentioned in this New York Post piece, that it is relentless DEI. And it is, and it's really making people dumber, if dumber is even a word. And I quote, this one's called "Inside America's Collapsing Public Schools," and it's also from the New York Post. It's a pretty long article, which is why I wanted to get into it before the third break, because I'm probably going to have to carry it over. But a fascinating article. Now, you know what? I'm going to save that for just a second. Let me just read a couple paragraphs, and then we'll get into it. The National Assessment of Educational Progress shows scores that American students recently earned their lowest marks in decades in reading and math. Despite this precipitous decline in academic performance, donor organizations are still pouring millions into pushing ethnic studies programs and woke teacher trainings. Nicole Neely, the president of the watchdog group Parents Defending Education, which, by the way, that group has been on Cowboy State Politics. If you want to listen to an interesting interview with my friend Meline Salabaria, who at the time she was working for Parents Defending Education. I don't know if she still is or not, but at that time she was. Anyway, it's a fascinating interview about what was happening in our state as it relates to all this woke education. She spoke to the Daily Wire podcast Monday this week about the left-wing effort to effectively indoctrinate students and neglect academics. She said, "These scores are really showing and highlighting that our children are not performing well. They're not thriving, and they don't have the skills to succeed in a global economy. Parents are sending their kids to school for 7 or 8 hours a day and rightly expect them to master things like reading, writing, mathematics, science, but that's not what's happening. And even in Wyoming, there have been studies that show that almost half of graduating seniors graduating eighth graders, if they still have eighth grade graduation. Anyway, over half of them are not reading at a proficient level. They're spending hours and hours learning about grievances, talking about big feelings, being told that they're victims because of the color of their skin. That's time that they can't get back," she said. "It's absolutely astonishing that this is not considered like a flashing neon red light for everybody." You look at the amount of money that has been poured into the U.S. education system since the founding of the Department of Education in 1980. It's approximately $3 trillion that has been siphoned out of state and local taxes. And the price per pupil that public schools are spending on students is through the roof. In Wyoming, the number last year was $21,700 for each and every student that's in school. Yet our achievement keeps falling off a cliff, Neely said. Clearly, there is a failure of the system, and there's a real need to reimagine what and how our education is delivered to our youngest. The main issue in this whole thing is that schools are pushing so-called ethnic studies, which can sound benign, but is anything but that. What it means is it actually wants to teach students how to be little social justice warriors, Neely explained. It wants to encourage activism, and it views the world through the oppressor-oppressed matrix. And so we're seeing children who are learning things about white supremacy culture, settler colonialism, and things that really set children up from a very, very young age to hate each other and put each other into groups based on collective identity, which is terrifying because, as we know, children are impressionable. And those lessons that started at a young age, we now see those reverberating in college campuses. Districts are obtaining ethnic studies courses from liberal colleges and universities. And when you have a school that is teaching things akin to the 1619 Project, that isn't that was developed as a curriculum, but it wasn't developed by educators. It was developed by an opinion writer for the New York Times. And it is entirely fabricated. But there are schools, even some in Wyoming, that were teaching that ridiculous curriculum that America was founded as a racist country, which it absolutely wasn't. Was there slavery in America at that time? Yep. Was there slavery in Europe? Yep. Was there slavery in among Native American tribes? Yep. There was slavery existed everywhere. And, America was not unique in that. But to just claim that it was started as a racist country and as a slave country is absolutely wrong. I mean, our founders had two choices. They could take the way of Jamestown, which was the hub of the slave trade at that time in the 1600s, the early to mid 1600s, or they could take the route of Plymouth. Guess which one our founders chose? You can look at all of our founding documents, and it's very, very, very clear. You can read the Constitution, and I mean and this shows you the ignorance of most people to say that the Constitution is a pro-slavery document. It absolutely is not. If you look at Article 5, one of the things that you cannot change about the Constitution is to ban slavery before 1808. Okay, that was part of the 3/5 compromise that was made. 3/5 compromise is what most people point to, say, see, it's a slavery document. But really, it was a giant historical time bomb that our founders put in there because they knew at the time the population of the North was growing at a faster rate than the population of the South. And, my friends, it is absolutely incredible that we teach our kids these things. Now, when we come back, I'm going to show you how this is absolutely the case when it comes to Wyoming, how it is happening here. This isn't one of those things that it's not happening in Wyoming. Well, coming up after the break, I'm going to prove it to you. Be back in a minute. Yeah, I know. The weather seems to be toying with us. 60 one day, 42 the next, and pretty soon, my friends, those 6s and 4s are going to turn into 3s and 2s. Though we all want to avoid it, that white stuff is coming, my friends, and you will be shoveling the walk in it. It's cold, it's unpleasant, and nobody likes to do it. But you could make it just a little bit more comfortable and prevent your feet from turning into a giant block of ice. In fact, you could keep them nice and warm and toasty, and your toes will never even know that they're outside. The rest of you may be frozen solid, but at least your feet won't be. To make all this happen, you just need a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. This program is only going to continue to expand. You listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. The live program Tuesday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. That's the program you're watching right now. And again, don't forget to sign up for the Outrider, the official newsletter of Cowboy State Politics. I've gotten great responses from it, and if you want me to send you a copy of it, you need to go sign up at cowboystatepolitics.com. Just go to the website. Very first thing you'll see is a pop-up that says join the newsletter. Put your email address in there, and I'll send it to you. So anyway, welcome back to the program. Now, where we left off was talking about the problem in secondary education, and that is really, we started out with post-secondary education, but now we're into high school. And part of the problem is schools are teaching stupid courses and stupid ideas like ethnic studies and DEI. And nationwide, DEI has been metastasizing across the country. Now, the knee-jerk reaction in our state is to say that, that's not happening in Wyoming. That doesn't happen here. Well, the truth is, it happens everywhere. And if you're just going to be one of those people like an ostrich and stick your head in the sand, I don't know if they actually do that, but I mean, if that's your attitude, to stick your nose in the sand and to say that it's not happening in Wyoming, frankly, you don't have any business being around a school, and you definitely don't have any business being around little children. But it is happening in Wyoming. And, the Cowboy State Daily, they call the Wyoming Education Association an education advocacy organization. Okay, yeah, maybe they are, but the truth is they're a teachers union, and they have been for a really long time. They collect dues. That kind of means that they're a union. But it also means that they train teachers. And quite a while ago, I brought you the story of the Safe and Just Schools cadre, which was this ridiculous thing that was put out by the Wyoming Education Association. And the whole thing was to indoctrinate kids. And I mean, that's exactly what they were doing. And the whole thing, and you need to go look at it, just go to Google and type in Safe and Just Schools cadre. And what you'll find out, and let me just see if I can pull it up here. Here we go. Maybe. You see, I need to run through this thing, and because I'm just having a problem pulling stuff up. But let me just read to you what, maybe I can find it. Anyway, the Safe and Just Schools cadre, what it is a program to train teachers. And they, admittedly so. And so what they try to do, and we'll just go ahead and do this. Let's see here. Here we go. Bet I can find it now. No, it just doesn't like that. So anyway, I'll just read to you what their website says. So the Safe Just Schools cadre, if you go look at it, it'll say on the main page, it says the WEA Safe and Just Schools offers practical training for education employees to create a welcoming learning environment for all students. They provide no-cost training to Wyoming educators. And let me just read you a couple of examples of the training that you can, if you're a teacher, that you can get. There's a session that introduces participants to the LGBTQZXPWDS specific vocabulary. Topics covered include students who identify as trans and their use of bathrooms, LGBTQZXPWDS issues in sports, issues in education, gender fluidity, pronouns, and additional issues brought up by the participants. Absolutely incredible, my friends, that we are in any way saying that, yeah, we're going to allow teachers to, here we go. I don't know why it does that way, but let me just, there it is on the screen. So this one right here is the first one. The LGBTQ legal rights and education was the first one that I read to you. The other one that you're seeing on the screen on the right-hand side is, in my opinion, far more troubling. This one they call the social justice umbrella. During this session, we will explore together how to activate change, activate change. Now, what does that mean? It means that you're turning teachers into activists. That's exactly what that means. You wouldn't use that word if you didn't. And so it is the Wyoming Education Association that's pushing all of this DEI nonsense. And so to say that this isn't happening in Wyoming, it's absolutely, well, it's wrong, first of all, and it's completely deceptive. But there again, that's what a lot of these, leftist education activists are doing, try to convince you of things that aren't true. And, just look at the lobbyist for the Education Association. This is the guy that I called Grand Dragon Satan socks when he was wearing around, I don't know what they were, he was wearing around a satanic symbol on his socks, on his social media. He had allusions to the Church of Satan. So this is the guy that's the lobbyist. His name is Tate Mullen. He's the lobbyist for the Wyoming Education Association. So to just ad hoc say that these sorts of things aren't happening in Wyoming is absolutely wrong when you have the teachers union that's advocating for this stuff. The first iteration of the ethnic studies curriculum didn't even mention the Holocaust when it was talked about in European history. Quote, you sort of see these administrators' thumbs on the scale about whose history should be told and whose shouldn't be. But in curriculums across the country, things like the Holocaust aren't even mentioned. When I lived in Tennessee, I got a hold of my stepdaughter's history book. There was 3/4 of a page on the American Revolution. 3/4 of a page. And again, it was a world history book, but that's the first time that ever happened in the history of the world, and there was only 3/4 of a page. However, there was 6 pages on socialism. Now, what does that tell you? It is a push to, infiltrate our education system, and a lot of it is, race-based, and this DEI. Now, this last piece, this is what I just showed you. Teachers' trainings and unions are out of whack. And I quote, despite declining scores, which were already bad before COVID, teacher trainings are still not geared towards improving academic outcomes. Quote, I think many of us assume that these professional development days are days that our teachers are learning how to be better educators. But her organization, Parents Defending Education, has FOIA'd, and we've come across a lot of teacher training materials. We have teachers who send us these things. She's explained, often the teachers are being taught things like critical race theory, gender theory. We got something from Eau Claire schools in Wisconsin a couple of years ago that talked about parental exclusion policies. The parents don't have a right to know their child's gender identity. That too has happened in Wyoming, the lawsuit that was going on in Rock Springs. When our teachers are being taught these things, they're not actually taught what their responsibilities are under the law as an educator. They're not taught how to be a better teacher. They're taught a lot of ideology. And teachers' unions, too, are focused on social justice. I just gave you an example of one, the one teachers' union that's in Wyoming. That's exactly what they're doing. You look at teachers' unions and their national conferences they hold every year. They're voting on abortion on demand. They're voting on Medicare for all. They're voting on free Palestine, support for Ukraine, all of these leftist causes. And where do you think that stuff is ending up? In your children's head is where it's ending up. And to claim that this isn't happening is absolutely ridiculous. It was, I don't know, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that I did the story about the Cheyenne teacher who he posted a picture of him sitting at his desk in the classroom. And the picture appeared to be pretty benign until you looked at what was hanging on the wall behind him. And it was a picture, I think it was a picture of Karl Marx, if I remember correctly. Karl Marx or Che Guevara or one of them. But that was hanging in the classroom. And of course, conservatives in Cheyenne went absolutely bat crap crazy about it, as they absolutely should have. But that sort of thing absolutely does happen in Wyoming. And to suggest that it's not is just absolutely wrong. It happens in every school. It happens in every county. And to just claim that it's not, like I said, it's to stick your head in the sand and just to try to avoid it. Let's see here. All right. So moving on. Probably over the weekend, you heard that Donald Trump said that we're going to pause all immigration from third world countries. And Trump said, we don't want these people. And he declines to lay out a timeline. And I think this one's from Breitbart. President Donald Trump declined to lay out a timeline on his administration's planned pause on offers of asylum regarding 19 countries of concern. Trump defended the pause, but did not say that he might relax it while speaking with reporters on board Air Force One on Sunday. The president said the U.S. is better off without accepting refugees from targeted countries. Now, the 19 countries of concern include Afghanistan, Burma, Chad, Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Yemen, Burundi, Cuba, Laos, Sierra Leone, Togo, Turkmenistan, and Venezuela. Quote, "We don't want these people. We have enough problems of our own. We don't want them," the president said. You know why we don't want them? Because many of them are no good and they shouldn't be in our country. It's just, the entire 4 years of Biden, all I wanted was to hear Trump talk about national and foreign policy. I love the way that he's so plain spoken about it. Asylum claims that will be blocked under the order are from countries that are, quote, not friendly to us, and countries that are out of control themselves. Countries like Somalia that have virtually no government, no military, no police. All they do is go around killing each other. Then they come into our country and they tell us how to run our country, Trump said. The president pointed to the case of Democratic Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota, who's long been suspected of committing immigration fraud because the way that she got her citizenship is by marrying her brother. Now, of course, she didn't admit that she was marrying her brother at the time, but that's what she did. The president suggested that Omar married her brother to illegally immigrate to the United States, and that if the exact accusation is true, Omar should be thrown, quote, the hell out of our country, because she entered the country and did false immigration documents. That's pretty clear. I don't see any way that you can get around that. Trump first announced the pause on accepting the asylum claims from 19 countries in a pair of posts on Truth Social on Thanksgiving Day. The president added that he plans to investigate and remove foreigners who are not citizens residing in the U.S. who are a, quote, not a net asset to the country. And here is the entirety of his Truth Social post. Quote, "I will permanently pause migration from all third world countries to allow the U.S. system to fully recover. Terminate all of the millions of Biden illegal admissions, including those signed by Sleepy Joe's auto pen, and remove anyone who is not a net asset to the U.S. or is incapable of loving our country. End all federal benefits and subsidies to non-citizens of our country. Denaturalize migrants who undermine domestic tranquility, and deport any foreign national who is a public charge, security risk, or not compatible with Western civilization," said Trump. That is exactly what we should be doing, my friends. There is no question about it. If you are not here to become an American, you should not be in America. It's, one of the things that I need to do, I have my grandfather's immigration papers. And I've got a copy of the practice test, which unfortunately is very, very, very fragile. But if you and I were to try to take it, we would flunk it. There are so many things on there that are very, very, very specific. Who's your state representative? Who is your senator? Who is your mayor? It is extraordinary the lengths that he had to go to become a citizen. And now we just let anybody that we want come into the country, and then we're amazed when there's acts of violence that are committed. I think it's absolutely appropriate for the president to pause immigration, and we admit millions of people every year legally into this country. Is the process too long? Yes, I think it is. I think 5 years. And I don't know. I'm just pulling that number out of midair, but it from everybody that I've talked to that's become a citizen, it takes a really long time. I think we ought to shorten that up as long as you can pass the tests and pass all the screenings and all of that. And you take the citizenship oath. I don't see a problem with that, so long as you're meeting all the requirements to become a citizen. To just let people in ad hoc is absolutely ridiculous, and it's a perfect way to destroy the country. It's just absolutely wrong. All right, so let's see here. Speaking of college being a scam, I always put a couple of different articles at the end of the stack of stuff, because I know when I get to the end of the program, I'm going to need a couple of them to just talk about. Here's one. University of Oklahoma A student says that a transgender instructor failed her for quoting the Bible in an essay on gender. And I quote, this one is definitely from Breitbart. A University of Oklahoma student said her psychology instructor gave her a failing grade on an essay in which she cited the Bible. In violation of her First Amendment rights, the school now says it has placed the instructor, a man who claims to be a woman, on administrative leave while it investigates the matter. Samantha Fulnecki received 0 points out of 25 on her essay writing that traditional gender roles should not be considered stereotypes in response to an article about how people are perceived based on societal expectations of gender, according to a report by the Oklahoman. In her essay, the student reportedly cited the Bible to support her stance that eliminating gender in our society would be detrimental, as it pulls us farther from God's original plan for humans. Instructor Mel Kurth, reportedly a man claiming to be a woman, claimed Fulnecki failed to use empirical evidence, even going as far as calling parts of the student's essay offensive. Well, the parts that the instructor found offensive were references in the Bible, and of course, if you're a man claiming to be a woman, well, then you're going to find the Bible objectionable, which, by the way, it's not. And it's very clear. And that's the uncomfortable truth of where we're at, my friends, that it's, it's black and white. I mean, it's like being pregnant. Either you are or you aren't. You can't be kind of pregnant. And that's the problem that a lot of these leftists have with the Bible, is that they say, well, you got to accept all people. And that's absolutely ridiculous. And by the way, if your church is teaching stuff like all of that is okay, well, you need to find another church, because they're not preaching out of the Bible at all. Let's see here. Fulnecki, however, pointed out that the assignment did not require her to cite empirical evidence, adding that she believes the University of Oklahoma policy protects free speech, even if some people find it offensive, and that she was failed because she cited the Bible. Quote, to be what I think is clearly discriminated against for my beliefs and using my freedom of speech, and especially for my religious beliefs, I think that's just absurd, she told the Oklahoman. In her essay defending traditional gender roles, Fulnecki cited Genesis, writing, quote, God says that it is not good for a man to be alone, so he created a helper for a man, which is a woman. Many people assume that the word helper in this context to be condescending and offensive to women. Well, it's what the Bible says. It's not, and to grade a paper based on your own political beliefs. And the mark of a good teacher, by the way, is that the students never know what your political inclinations are. And that's another way that we've drifted way away from what education ought to be, that we've turned it into entirely a political affair, and it bears little resemblance to what is actually education. The university responded Sunday in a post on X saying, quote, it takes seriously concerns involving First Amendment rights, certainly including religious freedoms. Upon receiving notice from the student on the grading of the assignment, the university immediately began a full review of the situation and has acted swiftly to address the matter. The university went on to say that it acted immediately to address the academic issue. A formal grade appeals process was conducted. The process resulted in steps to ensure no academic harm to the student from the graded assignments. The school added that it has a clear process for reviewing claims of illegal discrimination based on religious beliefs, adding that this process has been activated. The graduate student instructor has been placed on, all right, so on and on and on it goes. But it's just another example of how we've injected politics into an environment which I'm not saying that you can divorce things from politics. I mean, I'm trying to create a news website that is, that doesn't have politics in it, or bias rather. It's going to have a lot of politics, but I'm trying to get the bias out of it. And the truth is that you can never completely eliminate bias. I mean, even the language that we use, some people could view that as being biased or otherwise. But education ought not to be the place where you intentionally inject bias into teaching. The goal of education is to teach students how to think. It's not to teach students what to think. To question critically. to ask important questions, to get down to specificity. And one of the reasons why, and I'll tell you about an opinion piece I'm working on right now. Have you ever noticed that whenever the Freedom Caucus is referred to, they're always right wing, the extreme right, far right, all of those phrases are used. And recently, there's been a couple of websites and a tortured article in the Cowboy trying to figure out who the members of the Wyoming Freedom Caucus are. But have you ever noticed that nobody asks, who are the folks on the other side? Now, I guess there's something to be said for saying, well, if you identify one group, you already know who the people are on the other side. But there's never a discussion of what their political ideology is. If you're going to have a far right, presumably you have to have a far left, right? It makes sense, right? I mean, if you're going to claim that one group is far right, then there are two other groups you need to talk about, the group in the middle and then the group on the far left. But we never talk about them. It's almost as if the media doesn't want you to think that they exist, and they absolutely do. Now, you're not able to ask those questions without the skill of critical thinking, right? To say, now, wait a minute, logically, it follows if you have a far right that you have a far left, or if you have a liberal, you have a conservative. I mean, you're talking about binary systems, or trinary in this case, right, middle, and left. But you have to possess the skill to ask critical questions. Hey, so wait a minute. What's up with the other group? Now, wait a minute. You said that this is true. What's true over here? And so you've got to be able to ask those questions and to come up with an answer. And the place that you're supposedly supposed to learn that skill is in school. But when your school is, reduced to nothing more than political ideology, you're not going to learn that. You're not going to find out or figure out how to be critical, how to use your brain cells to ask critical questions. Wait a minute. Why do you say that that's true? I mean, why is it that you're teaching us something that I can go right down the hall in the biology lab and I can find a whole bookshelf full of things that disprove what you're telling me? Now, why is that true? So, I mean, that's the role of a classical education, is to teach you how to think, not to teach you what to think, which is where we've gone with education. Finishing up with this Oklahoma State article, the University of Oklahoma's Turning Point USA chapter, founded by conservative icon of free speech martyr Charlie Kirk, who was assassinated on September 10th, said they reacted to it. They reacted to the instructor in question by saying transgender professor Mel Curtis said Ms. Fulnecki failed to use empirical evidence and called parts of her essay offensive, the school's Turning Point chapter said in a post. The conservative group added that the instructor argued to call an entire group of people demonic is highly offensive, especially a minoritized population, while grading Fulnecki's paper. We at Turning Point OU stand with Samantha, and we should not be letting mentally ill professors around students, the Turning Point USA chapter asserted. Clearly, this professor lacks the intellectual maturity to set her own bias aside and take grading seriously, the student group added. Professors like this are the very reason conservatives can't voice their beliefs in a classroom. But I have another question, my friends. If this professor claims to be transgender, where is the empirical evidence that the professor actually is transgender? Now, the professor graded the paper and said she didn't use any empirical evidence. Well, where's the empirical evidence of your entire lifestyle? I mean, come on. If you're going to bring up the question of empirical evidence of a paper that cites the Bible, by the way, it was an opinion piece. And so why couldn't you use passages from the Bible? We've gotten to this place, my friends, where we completely disregard the Bible as useful for anything. And the truth is, it is the greatest historical document ever written. And there has never been any archaeological evidence to disprove anything in the Bible. Not one. Now, I'll admit that the absence of evidence isn't evidence itself, but our education system has reduced the status of the Bible to nothing more than a religious document. It's not. It's what the Constitution was based on. It is the preeminent historical document of the time. And why we allow school districts to reduce it and to even remove copies of the Bible from libraries and classrooms is absolutely ridiculous. And yet, Teachers will put a copy of the Quran on the shelf. Oh, that's an important book. That's one we got to study. And what about the Bible? So, my friends, we have got to get back to sanity in our education system. And if you want to know why our schools are turning out morons, it's because we're teaching them things like DEI, critical race theory, and that we're training a bunch of little gender activists instead of teaching kids how to think. Here's one. A socialist. This is fascinating. All right. So the Socialist Party in the UK is not going to have a leader. Nope. They're going to be run by, wait for it, a Politburo. And I quote, in a move that may portend perpetual infighting, the far-left Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana party has voted not to have any formal leaders, but rather to have decisions made by a communist-style Politburo staffed by members. Former Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn, and again, this is in the UK, who was ousted from his previous party amid anti-Semitism scandals, will not lead the party he founded until earlier this year. Despite Corbyn advocating a single leader model, as is typical in most Western democratic parties, the now formerly named Your Party will not be led by him or his unruly acolyte and co-founder Zara Sultana either. Instead, Your Party's membership voted at its conference in Liverpool on Sunday to be ruled by a central executive committee of 16 non-politicians, the Politburo. You have to make sure that their socialist acolytes in Parliament are abiding by the communist dogma. It's absolutely incredible, my friends. Well, that pretty much burns up another busy broadcast, 2 hours on the program. It was a little rough coming out of the gate this morning, so I'll make sure that doesn't happen tomorrow. And, have a good week, my friends. And, don't miss the Cowboy State Politics podcast, which was published yesterday. Go sign up for the newsletter. It's really important. You're really going to love it. It's called The Outrider. So go to cowboystatepolitics.com and fill out the pop-up, and I'll put you on the list. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. See you tomorrow, my friends.